So that actually got me an opportunity to start working in agriculture domain since 2016 in Kenya. So I got a chance to work with one of our partners in Kenya, set up Y Center Africa, and that is how actually we got connected with the Godan network, the Global Open Data on Agriculture and Nutrition, and work with programs like this one. We also have done some work in higher education, not-for-profits, governments, public transportation, solar, and so on. But let's get started with IoT and AI in agriculture. The most important thing for us to note here is that most of this both, why do we have today's session talking about both of these technologies? Because you can't, in most applications, you can't have one without the other. An IoT, which may imply some kind of a hardware tool that may basically have a sensor in it and some kind of a communication medium connected to the internet. So that is the very simple definition of IoT, a sensor that's connected to internet. Has to be connected to some kind of a data source. There's a reason why you might be using a hardware to measure soil or soil moisture or the quality of soil with respect to some other data source. So hence you need internet to communicate with a data source, which implies you need a very good data source to be able to use IoT effectively. And once you have this data source, you want to generate some kind of output for the farmers to make better decisions. And that's where the AI piece comes into picture. So a combination of IoT and artificial intelligence is what makes agriculture smarter all the way from soil to satellite, if I may. So we have obviously tools like machine learning, computer vision, predictive analytics that allow the farmer to analyze real-time data of weather conditions. So 10 years ago, when someone would want to do planning, and if a farmer had access to, let's say, fair technology or just basic technology and had fair amount of knowledge about, using technology, they would most likely be only exposed to, historical data regarding climate. That, hey, okay, you are growing barley in this region. We believe that, in last 5 years this region hasn't received this kind of rainfall. You might want to switch your crops. But now it's possible, especially with in a world where we are living, where human activity based climate change has accelerated to an unprecedented pace. We need more dynamic access to data to make better decisions. And it's a shame because a lot of the activities human beings do, even within the agriculture domain, they do contribute to rapid climate change. But with using these technologies, we are able to use better inputs. We are able to use better farm practices that can avoid some of these problems, or avoid us to accelerate the pace, which is really the problem here. It's not the change itself, it's the pace at which the climate is changing. So getting real-time data of weather conditions, temperature, soil mesh, moisture, plant health, and eventually this is all business, right? Farmers, we are talking about economy of farmers. We are talking about their ability to grow, sell, and make money out of this. We have to talk about market linkages. So I strongly feel that IoT and AI has a potential to solve, using all of these data points to solve a lot of problems, not only for farmers but for consumers as well. We're going to see some examples slowly, but I wanted to point out this 6 specific domains that are currently widely used in combination of IoT, data science, and AI. Let's focus on fructify level detection. I'm actually going to give you an example of a company of how they have innovated using a combination of IoT, data science, and artificial intelligence to solve a huge problem of fruit wastage. This company happens to be in the city of Philadelphia, which is where Y Center head office is. So, we had a chance to listen to their pitch in real time, and I think it's an amazing inspiration for anyone who is looking to work in this domain of how this company found a very small problem, created this specific product, and now they have scaled it to save millions, if not maybe potentially eventually billions of dollars of wastage around fruits. And it's not just about the money piece. We are also talking about the problem of hunger and needing enough food and nutrition the to feed the population of the growing population of the world. So we'll talk. I'm going to give you an example around fructify level detection, but let's look at another one: detect unwanted crops. So if you look at scan this particular slide, it talks about detect unwanted crops, 3D field map imagery, which uses a small satellite, let's say small drone, crop health monitoring, livestock management, robots in precise farming. So we talked about precision farming, but we are also going to have a session specifically dedicated to robotics and automation 2 weeks from now. But let's look at, just scan this slide and you will notice a lot of these things are already done by human beings in a traditional way. We have the knowledge. See, it's very important. If you guys, anyone here on this call, in this cohort of second edition, is looking to work on AI based solutions, you have to know that for artificial intelligence to work properly, you need to train the machine, you need to train your data. So you will need some kind of machine learning, or let's say in some cases, if you are creating a conversation chatbot, you will need natural language processing unit, which means you need to train the machine to understand how to read data and then how to speak back to the farmer. You have to make a note of the fact that if you do end up choosing AI as part of your solution building in your startup, I'm assuming you understand you have a lot of data. You have to have data. And the second piece is you have to have the human knowledge first. Before the computer or a machine can start predicting what's wrong, you have to have the human knowledge to, and a quantifiable proportion of human knowledge to be able to actually generate some kind of an AI based application. So if we just pick up livestock management right now, the traditional way we go about is obviously go to an agro vet, maybe go to a vet, not an agro vet, that's for the crops, but go to a veterinarian and figure out what's wrong. And you may have specialized people who can say, also have the information about that particular area, that hey, in this region right now we have a particular a bacterial inflammation problem with few cows in the region. So maybe it has to do with the inputs that they were using to feed the cows, and it's going around in the region. So that knowledge combined with obviously personalized information about that specific cattle would really be helpful to manage the livestock. But now when you scale this up and you want to do it much faster, you now have a centralized place where you're collecting rapidly all the information, recording all the information about any disease outbreaks or incidences in that area, in combination with your tablet or your cell phone camera, where a farmer could just click a picture, put some symptoms in, and it goes against the database, thousands of points, hundreds, if not thousands, maybe millions of data points, to eventually make prediction for 4 or 5 particular diseases. It can drastically reduce the time of care that the livestock management would require in that case. It also always is not about disease. Livestock management has a lot of other aspects to it, including nutrition, including right now there is a huge business movement around what kind of inputs the cows are fed, and that results into what kind of milk is produced. So we are looking at potentially disrupting $1 billion dairy industry, just by focusing on cow. So AI, IoT is as good as the data you have, as good as the human knowledge that is pre-existing in this domain. Otherwise, you cannot jump into saying I'm going to make an AI-based solution to solve this problem. But we humans have to know it first, up to a certain degree, of course. So that's just one example I wanted to share of why we need to understand that before jumping into an AI-based solution, we need to capture human knowledge. Here is actually one of the companies, Plantix app. This is a very comprehensive tool, and I would recommend if anyone is looking to build app-based solution. It's very different than you have to build a computer-based solution. By the way, anyone working on mobile-based solutions realize that besides the data, the sensors that you would use, the network that you would build, the big factor that goes into designing this kind of solutions includes UX and UI. I'm going to discuss a little bit about that towards the end of it. But this is an app for crop doctor. It has multiple points for farmers to solve problems, right from clicking a picture, as you can see the health check symbol right here on the mobile, and it has a camera sign, right from clicking a picture on your phone and trying to diagnose it through thousands of data points to actually taking courses. So there's a component of education and awareness. And I know when a lot of you people, when you applied for Filaha second edition program, I saw there was a huge focus on education and awareness with many startups, where we realized that smallholding farmers are unaware about a lot of these issues and are unaware about a lot of the problems. And you're absolutely right. You can't just impose your sophisticated technology on someone. You have to undergo a behavioral change. You have to focus on education, awareness, and most importantly, figuring out a way where some of the farmers, let's say a farmer in Israel, has figured out a way to solve this problem. Israel is very advanced when it comes to agriculture innovation. How do we share and create a platform where the knowledge is exchanged between a farmer in Israel who may have faced a problem and a similar problem faced by a farmer in Cote d'Ivoire or in Morocco, and they can learn from this. So there's a chat functionality, for example. So that network building, that peer-to-peer exchange can be really facilitated through starting with AI, but eventually connecting, bringing the human angle to it. And of course, your machine can keep learning from this, by taking all this knowledge from around the world. But this is a very good example. Please check it out. Plantex app. I'm a fan of, how they have developed their product. I also wanted to take like a few minutes discussing something that's very important to all the work we do at Y Center. So we have been focusing on building solutions around UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I don't know how many of you on this call are familiar with what those are. I'm assuming some of you, if not all of you, know what UN SDGs are. 17 goals that help us to solve some of the problems around the world. And if you look at agriculture, it does kind of focus on zero hunger, but especially in context of, when we talk about IoT or we talk about AI, we have a lot of other domains where we are open to covering. For example, reduced inequalities. Inequality is about accessibility to, quality nutrition, accessibility to quality food. We're talking about gender equality. For example, in Kenya, one of my partners, he's working on building up farm hubs in local counties. So it's not just related to cities. We're talking about smaller, not just pure villages, but counties which has bunch of villages inside it, and building a centralized farm hub where farmers, young people, young entrepreneurs can all meet and actually focus on agriculture based innovations. But the gender equality piece is very important. The farm hub also doubles up as a place where we talk about the inequalities of women in agriculture and men in agriculture. Now, what role you would think AI has to play in this? Anytime you look at problems, especially around the world today, a lot of the problems, not all of them, a lot of them can be guided, or the solution designing can be guided through data. Now we have the data. Now it's not just an emotional statement or a political statement to say that we have gender inequality. We have data to show how there is a massive inequality on how much a woman earns from selling a produce in the market as opposed to a man earning. But with AI, we certainly now can bring that level of transparency to market linkages, having more opportunities to create a marketplace and allowing people to sell it purely from a consumer level. And I wanted all of you to keep your minds open as much as you are working purely. Hopefully a lot of you are maybe working on farm side of things where you're working on helping the farmer directly, but do realize a farmer can be helped also by helping the consumer, because eventually their goal is to sell more of their produce. So we can use some of these technologies on both the ends. We can use it on the farmer end to decide how can I plant better, how can I crop better, what kind of inputs I need, what is the level of soil moisture. I can get these updates on my cell phone, or I can also do it on a consumer level, having more transparent pricing policy and stuff. But let's look at this other example. This was shared by FAO. So this was talking about the fact that we obviously have a growing population. We are going to see almost 10 billion people by 2050. The biggest challenge is going to be to how do we feed this population. We right now have a hunger problem, so it's shocking. So right now, companies like IBM are using open source technologies. They have their own blockchain-based network called Hyperledge, and they're using a lot of data on that blockchain because that obviously is one of the other popular items that's in technology world that's used. And I think last session we had an amazing entrepreneur, Mike McCoy, talk about blockchain and the fact that it's immutable chain that can be created to save data and the ways to verify it and keep it very ethically transparent. There are companies that are using that blockchain network now to build applications upon it. To train, you need extreme computing power. So we are talking about applications like identifying plant disease. It has been said that we now, like company like IBM, they have algorithms that can identify 26 diseases in 14 different species in a same plant with 99% accuracy. Now, what does it mean for you startups? So a lot of startups are actually relying on not having access to data. There are two ways to go about it. One, obviously, through something like a Godan network. I really encourage you to check out Global Open Data on Agriculture and Nutrition. And I want to make sure that all of you attend the data session when we have one geospatial and data expert going to do a session in next few weeks. So you definitely should attend that. But also with a simple Google search, you'll be able to see that IBM actually provides a lot of these tools for startups to build their applications on. So you don't have to really anymore worry about how am I going to get data. There's a lot of training data available. There are a lot of tools available that are just plug and play. I'm going to share actually a few tools at the end of this session that I have used to build some applications. We're talking about infestations. We're talking about very early detection. See, right now the farmers have to wait until the symptoms are present and then go to an agro vet or a crop doctor and then figure out what's wrong, and they're going to take another week. That could lead to huge losses. But with AI, we are also talking about minimizing the time. We're not only talking about making better decisions. The decisions are better only if they are right, but also they are done in a faster time. And then farm equipment. So we already have existing, obviously we have been talking about water. There's a condition of drought in many parts of the world, including in some parts of US. I mean, I'm on the East Coast, but I have friends on the West Coast, and they talk about California drought situation, and it's getting worse every day and every year. We are also seeing wildfires. So with using IoT right now, actually there are students and there are entrepreneurs who have built simple dry moisture sensors that look for humidity and dryness in the air, which can predict wildfires in California. That same technology can be used to find out moisture levels in the soil that you guys are working on. These sensors are very cheap to find. The sensor is not very expensive. The expense, if I may, not the expensive, but the important piece here is the data. At what point should the sensor trigger, and what should be the trigger mechanism. So let's say if the humidity goes below 30%, it should automatically activate the sprinklers. So that level of automation for farm equipment is very important. Also right now we use blanket technology. Let's say pouring water or sprinklers, all the sprinklers just would start at the same time, or they would shut down at the same time on the basis of timing. We have achieved that level of automation. But what if I want one sprinkler to have more water than the other ones because somehow this part of the field is more dry? Machine learning and a combination of your sensor tools that are activated based on a signal is really going to allow our farms to be way more smarter. Eventually, there are applications that allow you to farm indoors, vertical farming, way better than you can do it outdoors. So we have regions that does not have good amount of soil or weather conditions. You can now recreate those conditions because of access to data. But this one, actually, I'm going to share the presentation with all of you. On the bottom is also there is also a link that will give you more information about this specific program. The two most right now popular items around automation and IoTs are self-driving tractors. So we are looking at autonomous driving. Tesla is obviously revolutionizing autonomous driving. We are also looking at how tractors can. Sorry, go ahead. Manal, someone unmuted. I don't know. I'm not seeing the chat. No, so. Just okay, good. Just continue. Okay. And then AI powered fruit and vegetable. Let me focus on the second one and show you guys an example. AI powered fruit and vegetable. So here is a company called Strela Biotechnology, and I encourage you guys to look up this company, Strela Biotech. They're based in Philadelphia, and they call their company's tagline as decision focused data designed for food supply chains. So they started with a very simple problem. They started focusing on apples. uh, when they looked at the data, they found out that obviously every fruit, it emits a gas when it's about to be ripened or it's completely ripened, and even beyond the point of being ripe, it's going to be rotten. They actually translate those emissions. They use a lot of data points and analyze the fruit behavior to determine what level the fruit has ripened to. So they look at the fruit maturity. They initially got this idea from the fact that in US, and actually it's globally true, everyone buys 5 apples and eventually they only eat 3 and they have to throw the 2 of them because it's too late by the time you get to them. Also, the whole argument about keeping apples next to bananas, and bananas ripen faster and they emit gases which ripen the other fruits in the vicinity, also is a problem. So they started with looking at problems in their own backyard, in their own rooms, in their own kitchen, and then they scaled it up to realize this must be a problem for the supply chain network, because the warehouses that keep these apples for long, long time before it comes to the supermarket and before it comes to the consumer, they have to throw a lot of this away before even it reaches your kitchen. And then of course we also throw it away once it reaches our kitchen, because we didn't eat it on time. But for example, in a market like US, where most apple production happens before the winter strikes, so that's around this time. Right now there's apple picking season in US, so October, November, that's it. After that, especially East Coast and many parts of US will stop all kinds of farming, apple farming. So they have to pluck all the fruits right now, keep them in storage for a really long time, all the way until next season comes, which is almost next September. So all the apple production is done during few months, and then it is consumed throughout the year and exported, and so on and on. This company figured out a way to create proprietary sensors, use an IoT network, obviously. So it's not using only one single sensor. The sensors also talk amongst each other, and then finally uses data to figure out predict which apples may rot faster. Because if you keep one rotten apple in a basket, it's going to make all the other, as the proverbial age goes, that a rotten apple can ruin all the apples. This was pretty much solving that problem, and it's a very simple solution if you look at it. But they're relying on two things. They have the ability to create a very smart hardware chip, a small sensor that can fit in the box, and of course it matches with the data. They're able to reproduce and scale this for larger warehouses, larger suppliers, and right now the possibilities are unlimited, because you can start with apple and you can of course take it forward next level to other fruits like avocado or other ones that are going to be ruined much faster, have a shorter shelf life. You can literally plan where to keep them, what temperature you can store them. But here is a better thing. Not only fruits, once this is helping the fruit supply chain, especially around storage and distribution, you can also use this for plucking. So now combined with robotics, the robot arm that is going to pluck the fruits can actually pluck only the ones that are about to be ripened. You don't have to plug, because once you if you plug them very early, it's not going to ripen further, as you all know. So combining your intelligence with robotics can really empower your solution to a different level. And please look up this company, because it was started by 3 students. They were not any people with like 10-15 years of corporate experience. They were all students, studying students in like undergrad and graduate, and now I think they have a team of people and they've raised some significant amount of money to do this. All right, let's come back to it. And here I have a few examples, and after this, I'm going to give you a specific solution that you can use to, if you really are interested in building a simple AI-based solution. I have an idea for all of you. I have a suggestion for all of you to use. But the three top most solution domains for IoT and AI-based solutions are: first is crop and soil monitoring. The reason I noted down these three solutions for all of you, so that you're aware that if you are focusing anything around AI or focusing around IoT, these are the places and domains where most amount of business dollars are invested. Of course, you can use it in everything. You can use from your aquaponic system to your hydroponic system. You can use it for your closed loop systems, of any other kind that feeds your plants or your fish. But these are the domains that are most popular when it comes to access to funding, the market needs, and of course the scope of the problem that can be solved. Starting with crop and soil monitoring, the most standard one, using a variety of sensors. And I do believe we have a company in this year's cohort, at least one company, if I'm not mistaken, that's working on the crop and soil monitoring. So you are absolutely in the right domain, if I may, attacking that problem, because it's huge, it's global. Second one is predictive agriculture analytics. If you are doing anything around prediction, if you're doing anything around disease prediction, input prediction, prediction of risk, it's a huge domain, especially because crop insurance companies, and with obviously the dynamic accelerated climate change, more and more policymakers, insurance companies are looking to empower the farmer with tools like this, where they are able to predict the next catastrophe around water shortage, or allowing them to do a better crop rotation so they can improve the soil quality. So predictive is great, but the caveat is, make sure if you do get into any kind of a prediction solution design, you have access to a lot of data. Someone on your team has understanding of data science or realizing how to make data sets. You also, by the way, now have ready-made data sets available, so that's not really that bad. And I'm going to show you an example in the next slide of how you can build an AI-based application in less than 1 month. So I'm going to show you what tools you can use to do that. There are two specific tools. The last one is supply chain efficiencies. Of course, I know you all know this. It goes without saying how important supply chain has been, especially looking at the world the way it is right now since pandemic. Companies are now figuring out we do not need static supply chains. What is a static supply chain? Basically, uh, on a farm, a particular farmer is producing, let's say, has a 50 hectare of land, and they're producing certain tons of a particular crop. They would load it on a truck, it would go to storage. From there, it would go to different, maybe uh, improvement processes, value addition, and then eventually it would go to the markets and reach the consumer. But now consumer demands are changing. The routes are changing. For example, after the pandemic hit, there was obviously for a long period of time there was a shortage of fresh fruits and fresh produce in many parts of the world because they relied on a static supply chain. While here is a fun part, or funny rather, that they could have accessed the same fruit or vegetable in their own country, but because they're so used to getting it imported from a particular farm in some other part of the world, maybe for cost saving purpose, or static supply chain has been established, people are scared to make dynamic decisions and they cannot procure the food at the right time, disrupting the entire market. And hence, right now, having something as simple as learning from Uber uses amazing level of satellite data, Google Map data, if I may, to make real-time decisions on how to move a cab from one place to another. Uber is not a cab company; they are a logistic company. Same with UPS, DHL, FedEx, any of these logistics companies in the world. They use so much data to realize that we don't have to use the same routes to take something from point A to B. So that's just one example that in transportation of food can be used around AI. Now there's no maybe much IoT there, but we are also seeing. I remember there was a company in India, and they were focusing on a lot of food spoilage in the trucks, and also figuring out possible theft issues that they had. So there were parts of country where they were scared of their food being robbed in the trucks. So now using something like IoTs, you can have monitoring cameras, and even on trucks, it's very easy for the driver or for a manager, a field manager, to able to easily see from point A to B and track the entire transportation chain for that particular food product. So there are endless possibilities and there are so many problems. My first request and recommendation to everyone is find out what's wrong, what's the problem, why do you need AI or IoT. It's not about the technology. Most IoT is basically a sensor. Sensors have existed for hundreds of years, right from the first radio that would sense signals to today where you have a Fitbit wearing or an Apple Watch on your wrist. They all work on the basic principle of sensing something. And the way it works is you have to figure out what you want to sense. How do you sense it? And of course, how do you compare it with data? I'm an instrumentation engineer by education, by my bachelor's before I did my biomedical. And in instrumentation and electrical engineering, we looked at the fact that sensors were anywhere from, as simple as 50-cent sensors to $5 sensors. They're very cheap, but most people don't know what to do with it. For example, at your home, even right now, you don't need to have a smart home. Anyone who uses a geyser or uses a stove top, have you ever, or a fridge or a microwave, they all, and of course your phones, they all use sensors. Your computer or your phone right now that you are listening on this, it never gets heated up even if the battery is continuously emitting energy, because there is a sensor. If your phone overheats, you will get a warning, your phone is really getting hot, we are going to shut it down. That is exactly how sensors work. So if you don't have that warning, there's no point of sensor. Sensor has to, you have to have data to know what are you are going to do with that sensor. Once you collect that data and create uh, that point of trigger or the limit, the final limit of that data, that's when sensors become really helpful. Okay, now as I promised, here is a very simple solution, and I would recommend anyone to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I'm lucky to tell you that I'm my organization Y Center. We are going to continue to work with all of you even after the technical weekly sessions are over. After some of you are going to be selected for the next round for your business development, so we will help you one on one on weekly basis, monthly basis to build your apps and your solutions, whatever you guys are working on. But here is a simple challenge for all of you. If you guys are interested in designing an AI based chat application, for example, that can help farmers to fetch information about, let's say, weather or about inputs, or just information about crop. The most popular technology, obviously very basic in used in many African countries, is USSD based application or SMS based application. So the farmer doesn't have to rely on internet or a smartphone, or even for that matter, buy data, which is expensive, internet. Using USSD and SMS, and I'm going to give you an example, something that I built in Mozambique, but it was in healthcare domain. They can send a message, it can go to a cloud. Basically, they send a message on a number, a simple phone number. It goes to a cloud server. The number is basically a cloud server, and you have thousands of data points on the cloud server. It matches it against the data on the cloud, and it replies back to the farmer's phone, either using SMS or USSD. Now, this whole architecture that I just mentioned can take anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds for a farmer to get information. That is amazing. And you don't even need internet. I mean, the farmer doesn't need internet. So how do you do something like this? I have two solid applications that I have used, and I'm actually currently using the first one called Rasa, RASA. Rasa is a chatbot developer. So here is the cool part about it. You don't know artificial intelligence, you don't know how to do coding, you don't know how to do natural language processing. Rasa already has an existing model which is based on GPT-2 engine. The world's most right now popular is GPT-3, which is owned by Microsoft. Uh, I forgot what GPT stands for. It's a complicated something term, something transmission or something. But it's basically an AI-based engine which has been trained on 100,000 millions of words in English right now mostly, but also other languages are added, French, Spanish, so Arabic, I guess. So Rasa is one of them. You can create conversations, and now you have to figure out, you can for basic purposes, if you want to design this in 1 month, you can put this conversation connected with WhatsApp, which is very popular communication tool used by many people if you have basic internet, with Facebook Messenger, with Slack if you are using a more advanced communication solution, but also you can use it with SMS. So you combine Rasa with a service called Twilio, Twilio. I don't have chat here, otherwise I would type it, Twilio. You can now connect Rasa with a text messaging application. And it's very simple. As I promised, you don't need to know how to code, especially if you're making just a prototype solution. Of course, you will need to know how to handle data sets, and you will need an expert for that. And you will need a cloud server. And I'm going to tell you something about the cloud server piece. I have a very exciting piece of news to share with all of you. And then the final, sorry, someone, Thomas, you had a question?
No, he just joined.
Oh, okay, no problem. I thought. And then finally, there's Dialogflow.ai. So Dialogflow, it's actually owned by Google, and it's part of Google Cloud now. And it's very simple to make a chatbot. So let's say a farmer says, "Hey, I need to know what are the market prices for onion for this week and for next 1 month." Using something like Dialogflow, you can create a conversation and it will reply back to the farmer. Of course, I can help you. What region are you in? And they can say, I am in the city of Kangema, in the Kangema province in Kenya. So it will look up against all the data points in Kenya, the nearest city, maybe Nairobi, see Kangema, see, look at the information that was published by the government, maybe regulating onion prices, and then give you the price for onion today, but also give you a forecast. So when this farmer is now dealing with any kind of transactions, they have more knowledge to make better decisions. And you can make all of this using something like a Rasa or Dialogflow because it already has pre-existing code written. You just have to write in plain English what the conversation should look like. And of course, you should have data to match it against. I wanted to give one solid piece of news. Hold on. So Center is now an official AWS Activate partner. We work with Amazon Web Services. So if you are participating in this Filaha program, you all are eligible to receive free Amazon cloud service for 2 years, almost up to $5,000 and even more if required. If you exceed 5,000, we can always give you more credits, and you will also get 1 year of Amazon business support. So how do you scale your business solution and more, not just technical advice but business advice, up to $1,500 from an Amazon professional in African continent. So you have someone who has understanding of the local markets, and all you have to do is create a very basic application, send it to us. We will give you a link, and it will be approved. We approve 100% of the cases, so it's not that you'll be rejected or anything. As long as you can show that you have the need to use a cloud service, you will get approved for using this. You can also officially be using that for your fundraising activities to build your prototype, saying we are now officially an AWS startup, and you can use that to create your applications without having to spend money. If you're doing testing which requires you to use server, we are happy to provide you with that. So please reach out to Manal or me directly, and I'm happy to support you guys with your cloud needs. Now bringing it back, I have last two slides before I open it up for questions. If you really want to understand the combination of IoT and AI, these are literally the four things every entrepreneur needs to care about. IoT is a sensor, as simple as that. If you say I want to do an IoT based uh, startup or a company, my first question is what sensors are you planning to use? Where are you going to get it from? Or are you building a proprietary sensor? So sensor. Second, you need access to a server. You need some kind, and mostly cloud is very popular because it can handle massive amount of data, which is going to be used for data processing and data storing. You also have to store enormous data. If you're planning to use AI, you need to train the machine, or the machine has to be pre-trained. Like I mentioned, Rasa, I gave you an example of Rasa or Dialogflow to predict and help you with the decision making. AI is only good if it has data, which means going back, you should have human knowledge. So don't take a problem in agriculture field that humans also don't know how to solve. If we don't know, the machine will not know. We have to know it ourselves and then allow the machine to learn from that point. And then finally, you have to think about what device you are designing all of this for. People design this, I'm going to make an iOS based application. I'm like, the farmers don't have Apple devices, they're expensive. I'm going to make an Android application. I'm like, yeah, but did you make sure that the farmers have access to Android phones? And if they do they have enough storage on their phones? Do they have good quality of internet? Just having basic internet may not be helpful. Do they have a tablet? Do they have a camera if you're using? So you want to make sure you understand your audience. One of the questions we asked you in Filaha's application program was to define your target market and to define who is going to benefit from your application. So it's very important you know who you're designing all this for. You can build amazing applications with IoT and AI, but you wouldn't if your end customer, in this case maybe a farmer, cannot use it, then it's pointless. So you have to have a very deep understanding of the devices they have access to. And then finally, I use this four questions to make sure that I need IoT, or for that matter, any technology solutions. Am I solving the right problem? So you have to ask this question to yourself as a startup. How do you know it's a real problem? So if someone says I have made an IoT based device that can help me track the movement of cows, and my question is, why is movement tracking of cows important? Is that a problem? And you said no, just because we have sensor like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, we decided we'll make it. Yeah, but if you tell me the problem is there's a problem of managing cow health, then I understand why you're measuring their health and measuring their fitness activity. So you have to know if it's a real problem or not. Are people willing to solve the problem? I have worked in communities. I remember in Mozambique where people said, "Yeah, we know it's a problem, but I don't think we want to work on it because of cultural issues, technology adoption issues." So be very sure if you're bringing up an IoT, a farmer who might be a small holding farmer may not trust your hardware. They might be scared of putting that sensor on their farm or their field. So you have to make sure people are willing to solve. And finally, who is going to pay for it? That is what makes a startup successful. You can use any amount of technology, anything sophisticated or primitive. You have to figure out a way of the business model for that. Of course, you don't have to worry about the last question, right? We will discuss that in the future sessions with I'll be available. But thank you so much for listening. I want to open this up to questions and stop sharing my screen. So
ना भी तो ऐसा ही है.
Go ahead.
इनको ले गया.
Manil, we have a question. I was not sure.
Thank you very much, Deharia, for your presentation. You really shared a lot of great ideas related to IoT and AI and great applications that are happening around the world. So if anyone has any question, please just raise your hand.
Also, we will be sharing the presentation with all of you and about the AWS especially. Yeah, we have a question from Thomas, I think.
Thomas, you can go ahead, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
can hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Okay. I'm from Brazil, and here we also, like Africa, we also face a connectivity challenge. Some areas we can't have not a good connection. So I guess it's also a challenge for to use this kind of technology in the agriculture. How we can mitigate this challenge of connectivity?
Thomas, that's an excellent question, and I speak a little bit of Portuguese, Thomas, because I worked in Mozambique. So, hola, and thank you for that question. Obrigado, I guess, right? For thank you. All right. So Thomas, the question has two solutions. Your question has two answers. How do you solve the problem of low network and connectivity, which is, I think, if not the most important thing, one of the most important things for IoT applications. So right now there are two ways to solve this problem. One is on the consumer level, you don't want to focus on the global internet, the WWW, the web, World Wide Web. You want to focus on using something like SMS, which I was talking about, assuming that you have that basic connectivity where people can use SMS and make phone calls, not internet. And that's why one of my examples was to use SMS, because that's what I used when I was working in Mozambique. We had problem with internet, so people, farmers, or in my case they were health workers, they had to send a message to a phone number and they would receive the information on text, but that number was connected to cloud, and there is a service that allows you to achieve this called Twilio. Twilio. So please look up Twilio. Twilio also has, if you guys are thinking about making an impactful solution, Twilio also has Twilio Foundation, and they give a lot of free support and credits to startup. That's first solution. But the second solution is the ability to create local networks. So this was actually created, and you're going to hear about this from my partner not next week, but the week after that. He's based in India, and we were working on a solution around internet based application, and we realized there was a problem with internet. So we looked at a very creative way of what happened when there were protests happening in Hong Kong. So the government had shut down the internet and making it very difficult for people to use WhatsApp or to talk to each other. So there is now tools where you need one phone, just one smartphone that can act as a modem. And if one phone can find network, it can now project that network and distribute that locally in that village. I forgot the name of that application. I'm going to find that out, Thomas. So please connect with me after this call as well, and I will send it out to you. But that way, you are able to create a local-based network and maybe have one computer, which even has a broadband internet. It doesn't have to be on a cell phone. It basically acts like your micro satellite that provides that connectivity for that village specifically. And that computer will have the ability to talk to maybe the cloud or to the server. So you need only one device to have connectivity now, and you can now spread and create different nodes of network. This is a whole like lesson in networking, but you are absolutely right that IoT is useless without a network, so you have to have a network. Also, Apple has innovated a lot, where they are now processing huge amount of data locally. That was done by Apple devices, new iPhones, and everything for protection, for security, actually mainly. But the key thing to learn here is now you have the ability, and there are sensors and chips available that can handle local data processing. The main reason you need network is because you can't save a massive amount of data on a local computer or a local mobile. But now there are options available around that. So if you have a very ingenious idea about solving a problem in a village where there is no network connectivity, I think your business model will have to include for that kind of expense, where you will want to invest in create finding chips that can handle complete local data processing without the need to send the information to a cloud based network. So Thomas, there are multiple ways where networking has already been solved in last mile, and happy to help you more, especially around that company that I told you about, that application that can allow you to build local networks. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect.
Thanks, Thomas. We have another one, I think, from Roderick.
Yes, Rodrigo, please.
Rodrigo.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rodrigue. I'm a postgraduate student in Benin. I want to know, yes, I want to know that what I want to know is that there's iCenter operates in Africa too.
Yes, we do. In fact, last year, one of the startups was from your country. And if I'm not mistaken, Manal, they were the winners, right?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have worked with a startup in Benin, and I've also worked specifically with Sierra Leone and Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, some startups there, and Burkina Faso.
Okay, great. My second question is that is Rasa open source?
It is open source, absolutely. I always give uh, examples that are open source and easily available. So yes, Rasa is open source.
It's all.
Perfect. And Rodrigo, because it's open source, one of the best parts about open source is if you are stuck and if you have a problem, there's a whole community on YouTube and on Rasa's blog as well. You can get your questions answered. You know how open source works. So I really love to use a lot of open source technologies.
Okay, great.
Great. Thanks, Rodrigo. Any other questions? Thomas has a
Yes,
question.
Thomas.
Just one more question, please.
Yes.
Regarding uh, fertility and managing the soil fertility, actually.
Sure.
Do you know any case of startup related to this kind of issue?
Sorry, I got the soil fertility. And what was your question? Do you know any kind of?
Do you know any kind of startup or project, IoT project related to soil management, soil fertility management?
So, Thomas, I right now on top of the head don't know or remember of a company, but I have seen a lot of soil fertility conversation around IoT because one of the things that IoT, especially sensors, can easily do is one of the factors is measure the moisture level, but you can also measure the pH level, the acidity of the soil, and eventually the goal is if you can connect that to data, it can give recommendations to the farmer of what crop they should plant to improve the soil, right? So I remember there was a company in Bolivia 2 years ago. I actually know the guy. He's not a tech company, but he does turmeric farming. But he uses an interesting, like I would say, human knowledge and a little bit of IoT, not too much, where he looks at the soil quality, and if the soil, if he does excessive farming, of the same crop again and again, the soil quality goes down. So what he does is every 2 or 3 years he changes. So he's doing turmeric, then he would do some other plant, ginger or something, which is also not that far because they both are root plants, whatever. So he uses like he rotates this on the basis of that, and he's making a lot of profits, and he's actually teaching local farmers on how to do crop rotation to improve their soil quality. Because for him, also the other point was it's you have to protect the mother nature, like he was doing it from an environmental reason. When you put this pesticides and excessive farming, it takes away the nutrition from the soil, and eventually your land becomes barren. So he's doing a great job of, with his company. But I'm pretty sure there are companies that do that, Thomas. I just don't know right now one of them. Maybe even in Filaha program, there is a Kenyan company. I'm not sure if they are doing soil management. Shamba Stick Assistant, Manal. Do we have Shamba Assistant here on this call?
I'm not sure if they are present right now.
Am I right to assume that they do soil management, IoT? I don't know. I mean, I may be mistaken in Kenya. But Thomas, there are many companies. The short answer is there are many companies working on this, but no one is done it very successfully completely yet. They're done in small parts around. So it's a great domain. If you're planning to work on this field, I think even if there are other companies, that shouldn't bother you because it's a huge domain. And uh, yeah, it's a really big problem, that mostly smallholding farmers are facing worldwide to improve the soil quality.
Oh, great. Thank you again.
So I guess there are no more questions. So thank you very much, Daharia, for your presentation today. As I said, you shared a lot of valuable ideas with everyone. And thank you for all the assistants for being here today. And let's see you next week in the next webinar, of course.
Thank you so much, Manal, and thank you everyone. Take care, and I will see you in the next sessions. Bye.
Yes, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.